Happy Monday. Super Bowl is 2 weeks away. And we knew who's going to play in Super Bowl 60, Matt, and that will be a rematch. 11 years in the making. Seattle coming against the Patriots. No Brady this time, but the Pats are back, and Seahawks are there. And honestly, one really ugly game, and the other one kind of very, eh. I mean, it was interesting. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, the Seahawks and the Rams game definitely the better of the two
Mm-hmm.
games that took place yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know that New England and Denver game, I want to say like criticize Drake May for the performance, say New England didn't look good and all that stuff, and I think that's fair criticism to give them
Yeah.
as we sit here because when you look at the box score, snow, no snow, that first half wasn't exactly exceptional
Right.
from them there. Um, but it's also a game that Mike Vrabel had his script. Like he knew the way they wanted to win that football game, and it was going to be make Jared Stidham score for
Mm-hmm.
Denver, and especially in that second half, your opportunities to score points
Right.
got diminished greatly due to the weather. So when a field goal is now like you need to get really around the 20, probably inside of the 20 to feel good about making a field goal,
Right.
then that's a situation that's set up perfectly for New England in that second half.
Yeah, and if you remember, they went a couple times down to the sideline reporters, and both once we got into that third quarter, when the snow really started to cut, they kept saying, the wind is swirling all over the place, and we saw when they punted the ball. I mean, that the ball didn't travel very far at all, and so
Yeah.
it was it kind of reminded me of the Rams game with the Eagles last year in the
Mhm.
championship game when it was snow, and yeah, the receivers know where they're going, absolutely, but there's also the track is not the best of situations, and regardless of what anyone says, there were drop passes. Okay, we know that, we saw that, but it's hard to blame somebody for dropping a pass when the ball is coming, your hands are freezing, and you can't get a grip on the ball.
Yeah,
So it's hard to say, well, he should have caught that pass. Well, yeah, in new good conditions he would have, but it wasn't good conditions.
yeah, and listen, sometimes it had to do with the timing.
Yeah.
I remember there was a check down that when you just watch it, it looks like a pass that bounces off the running back's shoulder pad
Right.
and falls to the ground. In reality, what it is Jared Stidham threw a really hard football to a guy that was pretty close to him
Right.
when he wasn't ready for it yet. Like
Hmm.
it's a really hard ball to just be able to grab. Like I know people look at it and go, well, that's an easy play. Like you should make that play. Sometimes timing being off right there can make
Hmm.
those plays significantly more difficult. And like in terms of the wind and stuff like that as well, there's an opportunity. They mentioned it seemed like a lot throughout that second half on the broadcast. But when they flipped fields, like the end of the field that you were driving on was very important due to the wind direction.
Hmm.
Like you're
Right.
throwing that wind, like Jared Stidham, I think he was going with the wind in the fourth quarter. I
Last
believe
quarter, yeah.
flip, yeah. Um, and he fluttered one up there while they were going with the wind. Like
Hmm.
that last throw, or I say last, one of the final drives where he threw that football to Christian Gonzalez,
Hmm.
um, that it was like that thing just hung up in the air. There's no juice behind that football. It just wasn't possible. And so, it was a recipe that was never going to work out for Denver.
Hmm. Well, and the other part of the equation too, as you're saying, with the throwing with the wind, you have a tendency, okay, do I throw it hard? Because if I do, then it'll take off. It's almost like throwing a frisbee in the
Mhm.
wind. You throw it, you're trying to gauge how hard do I throw it, because if I throw it too hard, it's going to sail on me. If I throw it too soft, it's going to dump on me.
Mhm.
So it's on. It took a drive and a half before they could figure out, from a passing standpoint, can I pass the ball? And to be honest, they couldn't.
Mhm.
And as you say, Grable had his plan. His plan was, I'm going to make you beat me by the pass.
Yeah.
I don't think he can.
And yeah, and look, Tom Brady talked about it a couple weeks ago.
Mhm.
I think he was doing a Chicago game where it was really cold and
Yeah,
windy.
it was at night. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was talking about the dynamics and like the way you throw the football, when you get on it, and when that nose gets pointed up, it doesn't matter, what direction the wind's going.
Right.
It pushes up on it and causes it to die.
Right.
Um, and that's what happened to
Mhm.
Stidham's deep ball,
Right.
and they couldn't complete anything in the short to intermediate either, because that's what you got them into a spot to where you talked about it. Yes, the receivers know where they're going, and that's kind of
Mhm.
like the devil's advocate to how hard it is to play in the snow because the traction,
Mhm.
it's an issue, and it can be an issue sometimes, but it takes away that deep threat of the football the way it was yesterday. And so when you have a defense that's looking just about 10 yards and in, and a
Mhm.
quarterback who's in his first start ever,
Mhm.
it's not something where you can be that put in that much of a box on offense and still be successful.
Yeah, I mean, you wonder if they played in a dome or if they had played under better circumstances. Maybe that would have been helpful.
Yeah.
It certainly couldn't have hurt.
Yeah, because I mean, look, New England's offense was actually worse than Denver's for the majority of the time that they were
Mhm.
playing, like in what I would call normal conditions. Because that
Right.
first half of the football game, it was a pretty normal, yeah, it was
Mhm.
cold, but it was a normal
Yeah.
late January day in Denver in terms of the wind, in terms
Right.
of the weather there for the entirety of the first half, and the
Right.
Patriots' only touchdown came on a short field on a fumble recovery that arguably wasn't a backwards pass. Like
Right.
you could make that argument. I'm fine with the way they had it,
Mhm.
but their offense scored on a short field, and that was the only time they scored, aside from a long field goal drive. So it wasn't like Drake May had that offense humming, and that they were just a surefire runaway winner if the weather had stayed the same.
Absolutely. It was it was a game where we felt when we talked on Friday that New England was going to win it.
Hmm.
We didn't realize how rough the temperatures and conditions were going to be. They won it. They won by 3 points. They move on, and then we saw the Rams and Seahawks play an entertaining game in Seattle. But you know, as we talked in the pre-show, that was a game that was defined. You can't ask for more than what Matt Stafford did for the Rams. I mean, he did everything he was supposed to do. You can't ask for some. I mean, if you're looking for a game to prove that Sam Darnold can play, that was a game that happened.
Hmm.
But when you look at it, the Rams, at the end of the day, they're going to have to get themselves a new special teams coach because you cannot. They muffed 2 punts.
Hmm.
You cannot. And here's in the post game show. I was listening to LA radio, and in the post game show, they talked about this. Um, Brian Mitchell, who for years was one of the best punt returners in pro football,
Hmm.
talked to Mitchell, and Mitchell said how he got to return punts was in uh, Joe Gibbs was coaching, and he said that the guy in front of him, he didn't mention the guy's name, muffed a punt, and he
Hmm.
said, Mitchell, get over here. He said, from this point forward, I want you to go out there today and do one thing: catch the ball. I don't want you to run. I don't care.
Hmm.
Catch the ball. If you catch the ball, then you can run. But don't, first things first, catch the ball. And he said there were times when, even prior to that, in Washington's case, Joe Theismann was the guy who would go out. He was their second string quarterback. Theismann would go out and he was the punt returner. It was I forget who it was that was talking about Puka Nakua. That there were a couple of times during the season where they just sent him out and said, "Just catch it. We don't care if you move, just catch the ball." So
Yeah.
to have it happen twice, it's unforgivable.
Yeah. That's why Kyron Williams eventually got put in on punt return there at the end.
Mhm.
His job was to go out there and catch the football.
Mhm.
Yeah, I Matthew Stafford this year gave you high 20s, high 30s. Like he put up good scoring days
Yeah.
on the number one passing defense in the
Mhm.
NFL every
Right.
single time. The matter of the fact is that sometimes his defense let him down, and sometimes
Mhm.
the special teams let him down in a couple of those matchups. Like he put up 37 on them when they played earlier in the month, which would have
Right.
given or earlier in the season, which would have given them home field, the number one seed.
Mhm.
But guess what? The Seahawks put up 38. Like, and I like Sam Darnold, and he's a really good quarterback, and he played fantastic. He played fantastic last night, which is really good for him based on the way that he performed against LA
Mhm.
last year. Um, to bounce back and to be able to play like that, like I think it shows that he's grown as a quarterback as well. Clint
Mhm.
Kubiak obviously does a very good job over there calling plays.
Mhm.
Um, but it's something where you just sit back and you go, they had the best offense in the league, but they didn't have the best defense. Like they weren't the best team. The Rams weren't. And to Seattle's credit, they are. Like that defense is good enough. It stopped
Mhm.
Matthew Stafford to only get to 27 points. Like that was about all you could ask for, especially because he had a chance to score a touchdown
Mhm.
late, and they stiffened up and they stopped him in the red
Mhm.
zone, didn't let him score a touchdown. So stuff like that, like that's, and then you flip it around on the other side, and Kenneth Walker and that offensive line, they ran the football really well and effectively. That's how they sealed the football game. Um, so they just work together really well. Like this, it feels like the Rams went as Matthew Stafford went,
Mhm.
and the Seahawks go because they're a cohesive unit. They
Mhm.
run the ball effectively. Obviously, Sam Darnold does a really good job, and then we know what that defense is made of as well.
Right.
They're a complete team where the Rams felt like they just had some holes.
I have a question. Two questions. Uh, when they were in the red zone, we're talking about the Rams now, and there was still plenty of time left. You're 4 points behind. Why not kick the field goal, get the 3 points? Again, nothing is guaranteed, so you could have missed it.
Hmm.
But in January in the playoffs, if you get the opportunity to take the points, take the points. I mean, I get the I get the all of the sabermetrics of football saying, well, here's a good chance that this is going to happen. I get it. I mean, but that and clock management by at the end of the game there, where McVay uses all of his timeouts well before the 2 minute warning. I mean, you take it down and you figure this, okay, all right, fine. They get the 3 points. Um, when they're that last drive, they don't have to get a touchdown. All they have to get is a field goal to win. So
Yeah,
I understand, there's so much now of you know, a culture of, well, we got to go for it. And I understand and appreciate it, but there's also the, do you take the points in the playoffs when you have the opportunity?
yeah. I I'm okay with them not taking a field goal on that
Mhm.
drive.
Okay.
That's not where the issue would lie. I think the numbers say it's right. I don't see a lot of value in cutting it to a 1 point game because the matter
Hmm.
of the fact is that you still have to get that stop on the other side. Like
Right.
if they needed three on that last drive, they still would have been out of luck in terms of what they were able to do offensively.
Yeah, but
As
they threw away the timeouts.
Yeah, and that's where Sean McVay, like the use of the timeouts was really bad.
Hmm.
I'm personally a big believer in if you're going to play the timeout game, you play it with the 2 minute warning. Like you
Yeah.
use the 2 minute warning as your fourth timeout, or
Hmm.
I think they had already taken one earlier in the half, so I think they really only had two left.
They only had two. Yeah.
Yeah. And he took one that was like well off the 2 minute warning too, that I didn't like because
They
it
took
was
off
well
one
off.
in 5 minutes.
Yeah. And one of the ones they called, they immediately picked up a first down right after it.
Hmm.
So it was really bad usage of them. I didn't like it. It was spread out. Like I feel like when you're using the timeouts, especially when you just have two left, the
Hmm.
2 minute warning is your like that's your hit point. If you only have 2, the 2-minute warning is your third timeout. Like if you have 3, the 2-minute warning is your fourth timeout. You've got to be able to use and build it around that. Whether you want to use them on the front side or on the back side, you have to use them on either side of it. But that didn't happen. They didn't use them that way. It ended up biting them in the end. But again, another thing that bit them was the fact that when Sean McVay did call that first timeout, they immediately gave up a first down. Like that, the timeout lost its value immediately after that.
Sure.
So while some of it has to do on when they were called, that is true. Some of it also needs to fall on the defense because the defense made those timeouts
100%. Yeah. I mean, you can't blame the offense if they can't get on the field.
Yeah.
And if for some reason in the last couple drives, they couldn't get the Vikings off the field.
No, and that's I do like wonder going back to that final drive because they threw it almost exclusively, specifically when they got in there tight. It's hard to score from the 10 and in when you're going against the number 1 pass defense in the NFL, like trying to exclusively throw the football as opposed to run. Like it didn't feel like Seattle was threatened by the possibility of a run whatsoever there once they got down inside that red area.
Yeah. I don't know that the best 2 teams are there, but if we, Denver was the top seed in the AFC. The Seahawks were the top seed in the NFC. So 11 years in the making, we have a rematch. And they have Seattle, I think it's 3.5 point
It is
favorite at this point, and that will move one way or the other as we go over the next couple of weeks. But it will be a very interesting situation, and we continue to see things moving on the coaching carousel, and Mike McCarthy's going to Pittsburgh. And there's a lot of mixed reviews about that. Some say, why didn't they go young like they have in the past when they hired Cowher and they hired Mike Tomlin. My own personal thing is I kind of get the McCarthy thing. He's worked well with quarterbacks, and he's gonna be he's 62 years old. Get it? But at the end of the day, if what you've got to work on right now in Pittsburgh, you got to have a quarterback. Maybe McCarthy's your guy.
Yeah, Super Bowl winning head coach. Not many, or really any at all on the market have that as something they can hang their hat on in terms of their resume.
Right.
That's something that Mike McCarthy has. He was really successful in Dallas. He was really successful in Green Bay. Obviously won the Super Bowl in Green Bay, had Aaron Rodgers, and went to Dallas.
He beat the Steelers.
Yeah. And then went to Dallas and has had Dak Prescott there for a while. And they were successful there. They obviously just couldn't get over the hump. But Mike McCarthy was very successful. Like you go back and you look at his record overall, he was very successful in Dallas. Same goes for Green Bay. He's been successful. I think his biggest knock has been how they've looked in the playoffs.
Right.
Really under his tenure after that Super Bowl. Because, in the midst of that Super Bowl and prior to it, they had some good runs. That died off towards the end of his tenure in Green Bay, and it never really showed up during his time in Dallas. Like they would have some fantastic football teams, 13, 14-win teams, and then they would lose in the wild card, or they'd lose in the divisional round. They never made it to the conference championship. It's a legitimate knock on Mike McCarthy in terms of his coaching pedigree, but where the knock is, there's also needs to be the acknowledgement that there has been success there in the past with other results. But the biggest question there is like he had Aaron Rodgers. When he came to Dallas, he had Dak Prescott. He didn't have to worry about the quarterback situation. There's a quarterback situation that he has to worry about, and a roster that I still think is not in a very good place overall in terms of where they are age-wise and salary cap-wise. It does not feel like they have a ton of flexibility in terms of what they can do with that roster in the short term. So he's got an uphill battle, and he's going to have to be a really good coach, not the figurehead of a really good roster.
Well, I think the key for him is if there's any organization that has patience, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. They do not, this is not Jerry Jones and, what have you done for me in the last 20 minutes? Um, this is a organization that tends to give you time. And we've got Will Howard on in that quarterback room. We don't know what he's like.
Hmm.
Uh, they're in the, he knows Malik Willis, and that's a possible sign. Uh, I think they look at this team and say, all right, if I'm McCarthy, I'm going to sit down with the general manager and say, you know what? We've got a lot of holes to fill, but first and foremost, we have to find a franchise quarterback. How are we going to find that person? Is he on our roster now? Is that Will Howard? Because Will Howard never really got a chance because of his injury. Is it somebody that we bring in like a Malik Willis or somebody else? Or do we draft somebody?
Hmm.
You know, and coach them up. So I think from that standpoint, I've heard a lot about the fact that Aaron Rodgers may try to lobby him to stay because he and Rodgers have a great relationship. Um, I I would not necessarily think that'd be a wise thing to do unless Will Howard um, doesn't show him that he's capable of becoming a starting quarterback.
Yeah, yeah. You talked about last week how much the Roonies really like Will Howard,
Right,
how much they view him as a guy who could potentially be a franchise quarterback.
right.
Um, and the Rodgers case is one where you're looking at it and going, like we like Will Howard, but that we're not treating that like his rookie season. Like that
Right.
wasn't we're not counting that as his year of sitting on the bench and learning. Heck, sometimes it takes people a little bit longer than 1 year sitting on the
Hmm.
bench and learning. Not everybody's Patrick Mahomes. Um, so sometimes it takes a little more than 1 year before you're really ready to jump into that action. And what do they think about, like, do they think he needs another year of sitting and waiting
Hmm.
and developing? That could be possible. And if they do, then Rodgers is most likely your scenario. Um, you could also have the Malik Willis scenario. He's going to get a starting job somewhere
Right.
based on his performance this year. The question is where.
Hmm.
Not really sure. It could be Pittsburgh. Could be a couple other places. But right now, like they have a problem at quarterback. They're not the only place that has a problem at
Right.
quarterback. I think Atlanta, I would put them in a similar scenario in terms of where they're at in quarterback, where they're just kind of like in a almost in a sense of like purgatory, where you don't really know what you're going to do or where you're going to go. Like there's no clear direction. Because for a lot of teams, it's like, we were really bad, and the guy that we have at quarterback, we don't see him panning out at all. Um, so we're going to the draft, and we're going to get a guy like I feel like in Vegas right now. Yeah, you got Geno Smith, but you got the number one pick, so it's real clear cut and obvious. That seems fine, but it doesn't seem like there's an option like that for Pittsburgh out there right now.
No, and look, even first round draft picks don't work out if you don't have the people around them.
Yeah,
So you have to have the time and the patience. Um, yeah, it's great that I mean we still haven't seen. It took a while um, for Williams in Chicago to get settled.
hmm
We Bo Nix was a plug and play, but that was because Bo Nix's situation to matched up against the others. So I think that I'm looking real quick here, going through the quarterbacks he worked with. He had Brett Favre when Brett came over from Atlanta. Then he had Aaron Rodgers. Then he had Matt Flynn. Then he had Scott Tosian over at when he was in Green Bay. He had Dak Prescott, Andy Dalton, Cooper Rush in Dallas. Now he's got Will Howard, Mason Rudolph. Forget that, and a potential future quarterback. So that's where he is at this point.
hmm
You could say, hell, you could say Sam Darnold. right? He went to the Jets. That's where quarterbacks go to die.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he went from there to Carolina. They had no clue what to do.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until he got to Minnesota, and we both laughed about the fact that
Mm-hmm.
what did Minnesota do? He had a career year in Minnesota. They let him go because they didn't believe in him, and they
Mm-hmm.
go off and get the kid from Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
McCarthy, and he doesn't do him any good. So what happens to Sam Darnold? He gets another chance in Seattle, and he gets them to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like what happened to Baker Mayfield when Baker got bounced around. Once you find, and this is a pet peeve I have about coaches. They will take a person, they'll draft someone. Now, this is not a Shanahan or, for that matter, a McVay situation, but for the most part, being general here, coaches tend to bring these kids in, the quarterbacks, and make them try to fit their role.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we want you to do. I saw that happen. Harbaugh did that early in the Lamar Jackson deal. It's like, we want you to be a pocket passer. That was never going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Lamar Jackson can't be a pocket passer because that's just not who Lamar Jackson is.
Yeah.
And it took him Harbaugh and his offensive coordinator, a half a year to realize, wait a minute, we're doing this wrong, okay, and we need a course correction because this is not what he's going to do. But when he starts running and then he can pass, he's much more effective. So they finally adapted their system to his, and so they moved. But more often than not, you get a Sam Darnold goes to the Jets and he doesn't fit what the Jets want him to do. Goes to Carolina and they expect him to step in and run that offense, and that was a mess. And
Mm-hmm.
finally, he gets to this place where there's actually players that he can play with. In Minnesota, it works well for him.
Yeah. And look, there's a certain metric that you can't you can't really quantify it when you're going through these head coaching searches, but how arrogant is your coaching staff that you're bringing in? I think that's important because you talked about those examples, talk about Lamar Jackson. There's one that I have, and it's in college football. It's my favorite example because they had the proof, and yet they chose to go against what their statistical evidence had shown them.
Uh-huh.
EJ Uyunglele, when he was at Clemson, played majority of his snaps out of the shotgun. He
Mhm.
was not good there. He entered the transfer portal. Like, he was pretty much ran out of Clemson. He was just, now granted, they were, comparing him to Trevor Lawrence, who was there before him.
Right.
So it was a tough comparison, but he just wasn't very good at Clemson and in
Mhm.
the offense they were running. Then he transferred to Oregon State, and I think they ran somewhere in the neighborhood of like 75 to 80% of their stuff from under center. They were really successful. I think Oregon State won 9 football games that year, something
Yeah, the Pac-12.
yeah, for Oregon State. And so, DJ, as the market has obviously shown over the past few years in college football, DJ then took his talents to the transfer portal, and Florida State took him.
Mhm.
And Florida State took him. And what do they do when they trot DJU out there for their first game of the season?
Mhm.
Where is he? He's standing in shotgun again.
Mhm.
And Florida State wins 2 football games. And everybody's like, well, what's wrong with him? Look at what he did last year. Why is he not the same guy now? The reason he's not the same guy is because you took him out of what he was good in, and you stuck him in something he was bad in, and all of a sudden he fails at it. Like, this happens. There's arrogance on these coaching staffs because they've reached this level. Like, they deserve to be at this level. They are good at what they do, and they have gotten to where they are for a reason. But for those same reasons, they can have blind faith in what they're doing and fail to see some of their own wrongdoings in terms of scheme and how it fits the players. That's part of the reason that I think what Kirk Cignetti has done was so successful, because he had the self-awareness to understand what he was running, who was going to fit what they were running, and he didn't overthink it in terms of that. Like, sometimes these people, they go out and they try to recruit players just because, like maybe they're high 5-star, or maybe they've got all the statistical traits. They don't fit what you're doing, and then they come in and they fail. You're like, why'd they fail? It's because they weren't fit for what you're doing. There's that extra layer of stuff that people tend to forget it. Yes, Caleb Downs is a fantastic safety, but if he's a box safety and you're going to play him up high, then it doesn't give you a lot of value
Right.
draft Caleb Downs and let him play high when he's better in the box. Like
Right.
there's that aspect of things that sometimes gets people in trouble and honestly can lead to a bad public perception of who a player is when sometimes they're just flat out in the wrong situation.
It's funny you bring up the DJU Youngaway situation because um, the first year that Urban Meyer was at Florida, he had Chris Leak at quarterback. Chris Leak was an under center quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
He ran a press offense. He had Tebow there. So they figured, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to run X amount of plays with Chris under center. Then we'll bring Tim in on the spread offense. And they got away with it. Large part because the thing was Tim wasn't ready to be the starting quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Chris was. So Chris was successful, but they had a package for Tim that they brought him in for, which was such a change up that, it worked. But at least, you know, Urban realized, wait a minute, Chris Lee can't run them. He just can't do it. But that doesn't mean he's not good. It just means he has to play this style of football. Oh yeah, Dan Mullen, you're my offensive coordinator. Set it up so we can play 2/3 of the game with Chris and a third of the game in a package that gives Tim an opportunity. So,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes if you're willing to adapt, that's great. Now, I think Tomlin's biggest problem was number one, when he brought Russ Wilson in, that was a mistake. Anybody who watched Russ knew that he was years beyond what he could do. It wasn't that, he wasn't there anymore. They had no interest really in going, into any rookie-ish type quarterback. So he wanted Aaron Rodgers. The only place Aaron Rodgers was going was Pittsburgh. If it wasn't Pittsburgh, it wasn't going to go anywhere.
Yeah, no, it was one destination.
So whether or not that was a problem with the Rooneys as to why they left or didn't leave, I don't know. They've said they had a press conference. You're gonna have a press conference tomorrow from McCarthy, but the Rooney was talking and he said that they asked him about Aaron. He goes, well, Aaron and Mike know each other. He said, he goes, I'm not coaching the team. I'm just hiring a coach. He goes, that's up to Aaron and that's up to Mike. If they feel that there's something they can do together that will make this team better, that's great. But he said, our quarterback of the future may not even be on this roster.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I said, they like Will Howard, but Will Howard hasn't taken a snap that is not been in a practice facility since he got out of Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
So, as you said, and I agree wholeheartedly, who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. But it feels like they kind of understand their quarterback options as muddied of a picture as it feels like it is for that room.
Right.
It feels like they do have an understanding of it. Seems there are 3 paths that they can take. And it's just they have to get together and decide which path they're going to take.
Right. And where they sign and they're not in cap hell, which is helpful to them.
Yeah.
So they could go out and get somebody and bring them in, and with low mileage like a Malik Willis on them.
Mm-hmm.
And Malik Willis, if you look at it, it might be that Malik Willis has had the Sam Darnold Baker Mayfield treatment, where he's not been treated properly in the places where he's played. Now he's played really well in that Green Bay system, but he's not going to get past Love to get there.
Yeah, and for Malik Willis, he is not a free agent, correct?
I think I'll check. I thought that he was.
I couldn't remember. Let's see here.
I'll look it up.
Yeah. So Malik Willis is going to be a free agent.
I thought that Snoop. We were talking about Snoop in Baltimore had another year on his contract.
Yeah, it appears because it says Packers get disappointing news on quarterback Malik Willis in free agency. Yes, pending free agent. So what Malik Willis has to do for himself now is avoid the situations that he was in prior, like the situation that he was in Tennessee, that led people to have the perception that they did have of him, versus what he's done in Green Bay to recover his image. Like I as he can't just take the highest dollar amount. If he takes the highest dollar amount, the odds are he's probably going to end up somewhere that he doesn't want to be. Like as appealing as I'm sure it would be to be the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, take a look at that roster right now and tell me how it's really set up for you to be successful. Like that doesn't feel like a place where you're going to be set up for some long-term success right now, because it feels very incomplete. Um, like they need a good free agent class. They need a good draft class. Now it can be done. Like the New England Patriots have shown you. Granted, debate their path, whatever. They have won the games and they have made it to the Super Bowl. And they did it because they went out and they spent the most money in free agency. They nailed their quarterback and they drafted well as well.
Mm-hmm. According to multiple reports, Willis agent is in contact with Miami as possible. Now we know Tua is not long for that world. He is not. Miami has given up on him.
Yeah, and that would be Malik following a guy that he knew in Green Bay and their former defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley.
Right. It says now that the Steelers are in the very possible position, but analysts seem to feel that that he is being viewed by the Dolphins as their leading candidate.
Which would then, it not I'm not sure that he's guaranteed a starting job anywhere, but that would put Tua on the market as well.
Yeah, and I don't think Tua would be a fit in Pittsburgh.
No. I mean, based on his performance in cold versus warm weather, I would say not.
No, I think here's the thing. I mean, we both mentioned this earlier. This is not a good quarterback draft package. I mean, there's just not a lot of guys there that's gonna step off the college campus unless there's somebody who's gonna just absolutely knock our socks off. And if Pittsburgh goes the usual Pittsburgh way, which is middle of the pack, they're not going to be up in the front to draft anyway. So
Yeah. And look, a lot of these guys are now some of these guys now, like when you look at them, what they would have projected these NFL scouts probably would have loved them had it been about 10 years ago at this point, I would say. Because you look at them, obviously you've got Drew Aller, who got hurt. And based on his performance prior to getting hurt, it may not have been trending in the right direction for him anyways. You got Garrett Nussmeier, who didn't have a good year at LSU, but again, big guy, big arm, fits into that mold. Carson Beck, big guy, questionable on the arm strength at times. Obviously when he was good, he was really good, but had a lot of bad moments late in his losses that we discussed. So it's a quarterback draft class that's going to be full of kind of like shots. Like you're just taking shots there. You're not feeling like you kind of know what you're getting. When you take a quarterback in this draft class, you're just kind of hoping.
Well, I mean, after Mendoza, who's number two?
Yeah, and that's where probably Ty Simpson from Alabama.
Yeah, maybe.
I feel is kind of the guy that's going to be there. Guy that probably won't get picked early, but Diego Pavia's there. Clemson's Cade Klubnik will be there as well. But again, none of these guys are moving the needle for you though. That's your biggest issue. Is like
the other thing is with Pavia, physically Pavia's got everything you want. It's whether or not he can sit in an interview and you sit there and go, is this guy a head case or is this guy talented? Because he's done so many bizarre things, in social media that he would concern me as a general manager and as a coach. Is this a guy I'm going to bring into my organization who in 6 months I'm going to wish I didn't know him, let alone bring him into the organization.
Yeah,
Now,
and
I could be very unfair in that statement. I don't know. I mean, I'm just judging off of what he's done. Has been somewhat immature for somebody who really has the talent to be shouldn't do things like that.
yeah, yeah. When does the social media or the public image outweigh the talent on the football field?
Hmm.
It's a legitimate question. You could also, I think, you have a legitimate question as to whether or not his talent really translates to the NFL.
Hmm.
He's not a big guy. A lot of his plays were made via his legs. Like people talk about Johnny Manziel and why he didn't succeed in the NFL. And yes, while not watching film at all, that plays a factor in it. I also don't think his play style really translated to the NFL, and the fact that he didn't I like his play style in college was backyard football. Like, he wasn't making reads. He didn't read defenses. That wasn't something he had to do. And to a lot like Diego Pavia as well. Like, I know that he wanted to make himself in the image of Johnny Manziel, and Johnny Manziel was his mentor and this, that, and the other in college. But that's not a good play style when you're trying to translate that to the NFL. It's not one that translates to the NFL. You go back and you watch his games when he really played well. It wasn't like he was making plays that's like, oh yeah, this is an on schedule throw. Like, he made this read. He understand what defense was standing in front of him, and that's the reason he made the throw. No, a lot of it was off schedule stuff that he was doing himself that
Well, he
just
freelanced.
in
Yeah,
the NFL.
he did a lot of freelance, and he wasn't big. And he reminds me a lot of a CFL quarterback. If he'd have gone to Canada, he might have won a Grey Cup. Had that been the situation,
Mhm.
it's when you're in this league. If you're not 6'3" or better, you better run. You better have some speed and have that RPO type offense that you can run, because you know the linemen just keep getting taller and bigger every day. And if you're 6'3" and you got 2 6 6 6 7 linemen in front of you, not only you can't see, you got guys who can block the pass at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, absolutely. And it matters. I think, if I'm correct here, yeah. Okay, so you take a look at Tua Tagovailoa. What's he done since he really had a lot of those hits? A
Yeah.
little bit earlier in his career, he kind of the legs was no longer it's an
Hmm.
aspect that got used less and less in their game planning, and he hasn't played well the last couple of years. He's 6'1", like, that's something that matters, and so it gets talked about a lot, maybe over talked about this time of the year when it comes to the draft stuff, about the measurables of guys, but these are things that play a factor in some of the smaller aspects of the game.
Look, I think I have a great respect for Tua. I wouldn't. There's no way I would sign, and it has to do with what the amount of hits he got. I would be very concerned about someone who's had that many concussions and literally had to set out, you know, double digit games over a period of time because of concussions. I mean, that would scare the living daylights out of me. I would not want to be the team where that ended his career.
Yeah,
And true, that can happen to anybody, but no, I'm not drafting a quarterback unless they're 6'3" or higher. Unless,
yeah,
yeah, even if they can run, because the league is just getting bigger on that offensive line, and
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, do you think anybody? We talked a little bit about Carson Beck. Is Carson Beck worth taking a flyer on with a late round draft choice?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't take him in the first, but
Oh
but
no, I'm talking about fourth or fifth.
I don't think he's going to make it that far.
You think
I
he'll go before then?
I would say 3 and up at least. I could see
Really?
him being taken in the second round. Yeah, I back half of the second round probably. But
Hmm.
these are teams now where you're talking, like, you know now you're taking a risk. Like, you're not adding the extra year that first round pick gives you on
Hmm.
a deal. But what you're doing is essentially, for a guy like Carson Beck and the age that he is, and you saw the way he played this past year,
Hmm.
this guy bounced back physically after what was a rough injury. Like,
Mhm.
it's not an injury that affected his legs. His arm bounced back pretty well.
Mhm.
And so now you're talking about a guy where you could say, all right, if this guy comes in and he does a good job, like he does what we think he can fill potential wise,
Mhm.
then we're getting a guy on a rookie deal and what will essentially be the front half of his prime in terms of his age. Like that's just what it is. Like when these guys stay in college now, that's something where like the age of the quarterback should is something that has scared teams away in the past. Like we're
Mhm.
looking for a franchise guy. We don't want a guy that's going to be that old. Well,
Mhm.
now with the way the transfer portal and everything works, I think you're going to see a little bit of a shift in thinking when it comes to some of these older guys and these guys that are now like, are we going to take them in the first round? Maybe not, but we're going to take them. We're going to take them in the second round. We're going to take them in the third round, and we're going to have a guy on a pretty cheap rookie deal, all things considered, that could easily turn into a franchise quarterback. And if he does, we're getting the best years of him at a discount.
Well, he's 6'5", 245.
Yeah,
So that's a big boy.
yeah, he is.
So that's almost, I would say that's about Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah, I would not.
Brady was 6'5" as well, but I don't know if he's 245. I think Brady wasn't quite that heavy.
Yeah, yeah, and like Ty Simpson is 6'2".
Hmm.
Doesn't fit the 6'3". But again, other guys that will be available, Garrett Nussmeier, he's 6'1".
Hmm.
Um, and Drew Aller's 6'5" as well, I believe. Yeah, he's 6'5".
I'm
And
not I'm not a Garrett Nussbaum fan.
yeah,
Um, he was
no,
really inconsistent at LSU.
yeah, inconsistent feels like the best way to put it because you go back this year and he was not able to make that offense go. Like that
Right.
that was LSU's issue. For as much as it had been the defense in the years prior, this year it was their offense. Part of it was their offensive line, but part of it was Garrett Nussmeier. He wasn't great this year, and again at a certain point, where do the traits in the age, like where is that shift at? Because
Hmm.
like I think the way NFL evaluators look at it is if we've got this 6'5" guy with a big arm, like he fits all our physical traits,
Hmm.
is something that we think could hold up over the long term, and yeah, we're going to take that flyer. If it's 6'1" Garrett Nussmeier who didn't play that well at LSU this year,
Hmm.
you know, is it worth that? No, probably not. Now you're probably in that fifth or sixth round conversation.
Yeah, and uh, and we'll see. But let's tomorrow. Well, we've got 2 weeks of Super Bowl build up. We'll talk about the Super Bowl, but we'll also let's start tomorrow taking a look at what's going on as we get ready for the Major League Baseball season. There's going to be a lot of changes. There's going to be a lot of interesting situations in the game from a standpoint of what many people think this may be the last season we see baseball for a while. And there's still a few free agents out there who haven't signed anything. So we'll kind of slowly work our way through the baseball division by division and start talking about teams and see what's going on and what might be we'll take a look at what um, Vegas thinks are the opportunities for them from winning X amount of games and who's going to be your contenders and who might be the dark horses in baseball to keep an eye out for. So that's coming up soon, and I know that Matt and I, who are baseball fans, will have a little fun talking about that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Anything over the weekend that wasn't football that was of interest to you?
Um, Scotty won, which it continues the like it's a run that you haven't seen since Tiger. Like the
Right.
strips gained around the green, the numbers they're getting up there with Tiger. Like they're comparable now. It's in a different era than Tiger was in. Like
Yeah.
the technology, the fields, how many people there are in terms of the total popularity of
Yeah.
golf. So you're not going to see the overall wins numbers that Tiger put up. But in terms of the week in, week out, pure ball striking stuff, Scotty Scheffler's on the exact same plane as him now, and he's winning at an unprecedented rate. Like you can, there is that aspect I think now where it's like there is something about playing with Scotty on Sunday. Like
Hmm.
you saw through the first few holes, like
Hmm.
Scotty, he was at even par after a few. I think
Hmm.
Sifu had made an extra birdie. I know Blades Brown had made an extra birdie. Now,
Hmm.
granted, I'll put Blades Brown in a different category because that's an 18-year-old kid trying to go up against the number one in the world on
Right.
a Sunday for the first time. Like
Amazing.
yeah, that's a tough task to put yourself up to. But like those guys, they started off strong, but as you know, Scotty didn't. He faltered early, kind of, but he plays at that same consistent level of golf. And while he's going about it, it's almost like it grinds away at the guys he's playing with.
Hmm. Well, he's he and you couldn't have two more different personalities than Tiger Woods and Scotty Scheffler, um, and two different styles of play, more different. But a guy like Scotty Scheffler, who's just deterrent. He's a he's just a guy who goes out there and grinds, and he I think he's gaining more and more fans as he goes along because people are appreciating that what they're watching there is a guy who just can churn out four good rounds of golf week in and week out, and that's not easy to do when you're playing on a different golf course every week. So
Yeah,
under different conditions every week. So
yeah,
it's been fun to watch him, and I continue to uh, we'll continue to watch him and hope that it keeps moving on. But there's a lot of good play golfers out there. We'll take a look and watch those guys as well. One last thing, congratulations to 82-year-old Roger Penske. Roger, his Porsche team won this week at the 24 Hours of Daytona. Roger is an iconic figure in owning race cars. He has every division of race cars. He's got NASCAR, he's got IndyCar, he's got, well, he doesn't have Formula One, but he has IMSA, which is the cars that ran at Daytona this week.
hmm,
And so for Roger, that's fantastic. He also owns the Indianapolis Speedway, which is where his teams have won numerous times. So good on Roger. He was there. Actually, interesting thing. In the middle of the night, the fog had gotten so bad they couldn't. They had to stop the race for a while because nobody could see where they were driving, and that's not a good
hmm,
thing to do whenever you're going to 200 miles an hour
no,
Daytona Speedway. So
no,
it was a
absolutely,
fascinating race, and if you like, sports car racing, um, it was a good race. And the next one coming up for them is Sebring, which is always fun. It's a 12 hours, and that's coming up in March. But
yeah,
uh, good on Penske for winning, and we will see. One little quick side note: what's fascinating about this is that they have four classes of cars. It's the L1, the LP1, LP2. Those are the cars that are the prototype cars. The the designation of two means that you can have a pro am driver. In other words, you can have a guy who's driven a certain amount of hours but has not qualified as a quote unquote uh, uh, has not qualified to be a registered IMSA driver.
hmm,
So these are guys who've taken, it's like flight lessons. You've taken a number of flights. You're a pilot. You've got your pilot's license, but you haven't got to the point where you could fly a jet, right?
hmm,
Without some help. So those what they do, so that those drivers, is they have amber lights on the cars.
hmm,
So when you're coming up on the back of the cars, you see the amber lights saying, "Okay, I got a yellow light here in front of me. I don't know what this guy's going to do. If he's good, great. If he doesn't, he can wreck me and blow the whole thing up." So
hmm,
um, it's an interesting way of racing, to be sure, but
yeah,
you don't get to see amateur drivers most of the time out on the same track with some of the world's greatest. But
yeah,
in Daytona and in the IMSA series, they do. So we'll see. All right, everybody have a lovely and safe, and I hope hopefully for all of you, warm um, Tuesday, and we'll be back there tomorrow to talk to you about some football and some baseball and whatever else is going on in sports. Till then, guys, have a wonderful, wonderful day.